All right, hey, in this video we're going to talk about a bunch of different things related to online course design. These are some things that you would provide in your training when you're working with faculty or doing presentations. So one of the things that I found that I really like is the concept of the 2-minute test. And what this is basically Smith in 2014 said, "To my surprise, the learner indicates that they make a decision about whether their online course will be a good one or a bad one within the first 2 minutes of their initial login to the course." So they may click around a little bit, but basically just by view and by eye, they're looking at the course and kind of making their own judgment. So how it's organized, how it's labeled, how things are described, descriptive, all those different things are very important to students, and they make a decision within the first 2 minutes. So as faculty are designing their courses, it's important that they kind of give it the 2-minute test and that we kind of talk through what that 2-minute test looks like. But the one thing to think about in all this is that a lot of faculty are going to be uncomfortable. And so why is that? Well, faculty are subject matter experts. They've been working in a particular field or subject area for a long time. And as a result, they know the subject matter content really well. But what they don't always know is the learning management system, the technology, and basically the philosophy of how you put it all together and how you use that information to create a course. And there's some things that faculty will have to do as they're designing, building, and deploying online courses that they may only do at the beginning of each semester. Most often semesters are anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks. So if you only teach in the spring and fall, then you're only doing a process twice a year. Maybe you teach in the summer 3 times a year. And so that's not very frequently. So there's a lot of stuff that faculty will need help with, and it's okay to have those questions. And we as instructional designers are not going to have all the answers either. We have to work in tandem with subject matter experts to kind of talk back and forth and come up with these ideas. So when meeting with faculty to talk about course design, you want to make them start to try to feel comfortable, welcome, like find the areas where they, need your help or need your expertise, and kind of feed off them and use the information they have in terms of the subject matter content to kind of guide your conversation as you work together. One of the things that's very important is the instructor introducing themselves. The initial introduction creates a sense of connection between the instructor and learners. This introduction should include, at minimum, name of the instructor, title. It can include a photo or video. Should include information about field of expertise. One of the good things that's good about this is that we are teaching students, and so students don't always see the full path of their education from start to finish, especially when you get to college students, whether they start at a community college or a 4-year university, and whether they plan on to go on to advanced degrees. And so it's important as faculty to share your path, even as a designer, to share your path with the faculty members you're working with, to kind of use that so that it becomes an extra teaching tool in the course. It may not relate directly to the objectives, but it does serve a purpose. You'll want to include your email, phone number, and office hours. So most institutions require office hours, whether they be virtual, in person, so forth. All that information should be included in the instructor introduction. Now, they may be in different parts in the course, depending on whether the institution has a course template and different things like that. If the institution doesn't have a course template, it would be good and fit within best practices to kind of work towards moving in that direction. Some faculty in higher ed will talk about that being a concern with academic freedom, and it is to a certain point. But you got to think, if you have a student who's enrolled in 6 different courses and they go into each of those 6 courses and they look totally different and everything's all over the place and they struggle to find their way, you're going to lose some students who may get frustrated or feel lost just because of the design of the course. So those are some things to think about as an instructional designer as you're working with faculty and departments and divisions and programs. But you can also include in this instructor introduction teaching philosophy, past online teaching experience, and personal hobbies, family, travel, etc. Now the last one of those, some are more willing to add than others, but those are some options. And just basically like let students know that you are a real person, that there is a real person working with them as a faculty member on the other side of the computer. Now we're going to talk about student introductions. And so with student introductions, learner introductions at the beginning of a course help to create a welcome learning environment and a sense of community. And Liam and Consigo, physical separation of individual students in online education has led to students feeling isolated and a major cause of confusion and anxiety. And most likely when that happens, students tend to withdraw or drop out or stop submitting work or attending the course. So it's important that you kind of get, I like to do a discussion forum in the beginning of the course. Now I ask some not personal questions, but kind of like, kind of get to know you type questions. Some have to do with the learning objectives for the course, and others are just kind of like share your ideas on this topic or your experience in this area and so forth. So that's something you can do in a discussion forum. You can do it as a submit the assignment. But the good thing about what I've found to be positive about doing this in a discussion forum is more often than not, the conversation continues well past the deadline. So you can do this as a graded assignment. You can do a voluntary type thing. But it's really good to give students an opportunity to introduce themselves. And it's even more important that when you do so, that you as faculty go in and have conversations and monitor, not necessarily monitor, but join in and kind of connect the different pieces. So one of the things that I've learned from teaching courses that I make connections with is I find by going through and interacting with students in that introduction discussion forum, like I can kind of get a sense of, what my students' experience is, kind of like a pre-assessment with the subject matter content. How comfortable do they feel? What are their areas of strength? What are their areas of weakness? What do they want to accomplish in the course? And I can use that to help guide me in my course design and redesign each semester and each year. So that's important. And as I said on the previous slide, it's important to make sure as faculty member that when you are doing discussions that you get involved in them. In the online course, I'm able to witness every group discussion from start to finish, and I'm able to carefully review the contributions to discussions made by each student in the class. If students are struggling, I can reach out to those students and offer assistance. I'm able to learn much more than I ever could in a classroom setting about how students think through different problems and the hurdles they face along the way as they attempt to solve problems. And that comes from Dr. Michelle Everson from University of Minnesota. And I personally have found the same thing. As long as I create high quality discussion opportunities and I get involved in those, I find that students are responsive and they like those interactions and opportunities. We're going to talk about some important pieces, some very important pieces of what goes into designing a high quality online course. So one of the most common tools used in higher education is Quality Matters. And so the next few pieces that we're going to talk about are the very foundations of Quality Matters and what it looks at when it looks at courses. And so the first part is measurability. And this has to do with making sure that your course objectives are measurable. So when you begin creating a course, you want to design with the end in mind. And the best way to approach this is to start by writing measurable learning objectives. Effective learning objectives use action verbs to describe what you want your students to be able to do by the end of the course or unit. We're going to look at those more specifically, but these come from Revised Bloom's taxonomy. So you want to be really familiar with Revised Bloom's and the pyramid and the different levels. So you start at the basic with kind of knowledge and understand all the way up to like create, evaluate, analyze at the top of that pyramid. And that's where we're going next is Revised Bloom. So identify the level of blooms you want students to reach and then select a verb that's observable that demonstrates students have reached the desired level. So with this, one of the things, like the pyramid stacks up and starts with a wide base and goes up to a narrow point at the top. And that's kind of like how you want your course designed. You want to have, more opportunities. You want to have multiple different types of opportunities within each lesson, within each module, and throughout each course. And so you want to, give that foundation, give some of that, kind of practice, background information to create that solid base. But then you want to kind of work your way up to where you're getting students to do the higher level items within each topic, so that you're promoting growth within your subject area, your course. Non-measurable objectives. We're going to take a look at the following objectives from a segment of a nutrition course on vitamins and minerals. You can click that link, but if we go into it, let's do that real quick. And I'll have to resize this so that it fits in my video recording window. So let me resize it real quick. So we're going to look at the objectives for a minute. And so when I look at the objectives, you'll see understand certain minerals are required, understand that sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride, ions, so forth. Understand. Understand is not a measurable learning objective. You can't measure understand. So if as a designer, if faculty come to me with this list of understand, I want to look at it and say, okay, let's look at the first one. It says understand certain minerals are required in the body and that some minerals form essential structural components of tissues. So I might change understand to say describe how minerals are required in the body and explain how minerals form essential structural components of issues. And so by changing understand to describe and explain, I now have measurable components that make up my objective. And so you want to start with that measurable piece. A lot of times you'll see understand a lot, you'll see learn a lot, but you want to change that to make sure that there are action verbs, measurable action verbs in there to make sure that those are measurable. So we talked about why they're not measurable and how we can adjust those. That's very important, very key. One of the first foundations of Quality Matters. The next one is alignment. And so with alignment, now that we have measurable learning objectives, we want to make sure that everything in the course, whether it's the information that we're providing to teach, whether it's the activities that students have to complete, or the way that we are assessing students, we need to make sure that all those items, those key items, align back to those course level and module or lesson level objectives. So according to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, carefully written learning objectives provide students with a roadmap that explains where they're going and what to expect when they get there. They describe the intended purposes and expected results of the course, unit, or activity. They also provide students with ways to measure progress towards achieving outcomes. And so that we're going to talk about that progression. If I go on to the next slide, we're going to start with an example. We're going to start with a community college level course to kind of look at how this fits together. So we're going to create unit level objectives from SLOs, which are student learning objectives. So with using Introduction to Computers, one of the student learning objectives, or SLOs, is number 7, which says demonstrate word processing skills using Microsoft Word to create, insert, delete, copy, cut, paste, change text, and format a document. So that's very detailed. You don't necessarily need to be that detailed in your course level objective. But if I'm writing a module level, unit level objective to go with it, I might say create a customized resume using basic word processing tasks in Microsoft Word. So that is an action item. They are creating something, and I tell what they are creating and about the tool that they're using to create it. Okay, so that's an example of that alignment we're looking for. First, in Quality Matters, the first thing is measurable. The second thing is that everything aligns. And so with that, we're going to go on to why do we assess? Because you actually, when you are building an online course, when you're designing any course, actually, whether it's online or not online, this is the process you should use. So the main purpose for assessing students should be centered around measuring learning outcomes. The learning outcomes should be focused on measuring not only what students know, but also what they can do, how they can apply what they have learned. So the how, the what, the why, the when, all those questions should be answered. So you start by creating your measurable learning objectives. You have those for the entire course. You have those for each module or unit. And then from there, you start to build your assessments off of those objectives. And so when you do, it says, where do we start? Before we begin discussing the topic of assessments for this session, it's important that you should already have written measurable course and module level objectives. Those objectives should be written at a level that is suitable. We've just talked about that a lot, but let's look at this next part. This is the key to designing a course of any kind, especially online. You start with those measurable objectives and answer the question, what do you want students to achieve by the end of each module and by the end of the course? From there, you go to the assessments and you say, how are you going to determine if students have achieved those course and module level objectives? So the assessment should match. If you should say that students are going to create, you can't assess them with a multiple choice question. You have to have them creating, designing, or building something. So you have to match up. And we'll talk more about that in the next couple slides in a minute. From there, once you get the assessment figured out, then you start building in the teaching content, the material, the instruction, and the activities that will kind of guide students from those objectives through the process till they get to the assessment. So you're preparing them for the assessment, not teaching to a test, but you're preparing them to get to those assessments to measure those objectives. And different types of assessments, we talked about different types along the way. We also discussed, we're going to talk about how to use different types of assessments and how to effectively write questions. So we're going to talk first about formative versus summative. You want to have a variety of both. You don't want to have too many summative and not any formative. You also don't want to have a lot of formative and no summative. So formative are low stakes assessments that usually don't count towards a final grade and are designed to monitor student learning to provide ongoing feedback to the teacher and students. Summative assessments are generally more high stakes that is used to evaluate students at the end of a unit. They require low stakes, risk-free formative assessments that allow students to learn and experiment. So your summative assessments are like a unit quiz, module level, like a post-assessment type thing. And then formative assessments, you can do those. They may count towards a student. Most of the time, formative assessments do not count towards a student grade. So it's important to know the difference between the two and that you have an even balance of the use of those throughout a course. Assessment types, traditional quiz-based assessments include questions that are multiple choice, multiple answer, true, false, fill in the blank, numerical answer. Most of the time, all of those type questions hit the lower 2 or 3 levels of Bloom's. They don't get up to the very top. As you work your way to the top of that pyramid, you're going to have to look at other types of assessments, and those include, this would be Canvas. You would say Canvas, not Moodle, so I'll change that. Canvas assignments, discussion forums, essays, research papers, case studies. Case studies are really good, especially I believe from what I saw, the area you're going to be, this position is going to be working with is like in the medical side, I think, maybe, if I'm not correct. So case studies are very important to use in a variety of different ways. So from there, let's talk about this pyramid and course design connection process that we've been looking at. And so we start with the measurable Bloom's objectives on the left. And if we include action verbs like define, compare, identify, match, find, summarize, predict, group, estimate, express, and so forth, most of the time those fit within the lower 2 levels of Bloom's, which are remembering and understanding. And you can assess those with multiple choice questions, multiple answer, true, false, fill in the blank, matching, etc. When you get to words like choose, determine, examine, then you get to like you'll get to like level 3 applying, and some quizzes may work, but you're getting to a point where you're going to have to get outside of there and do other things outside of traditional quiz-based standardized testing type situations. Now I will go back up to the first row a minute for summarize, because summarize can fit in the lower 2 levels, but it can also fit in the top 3 levels. So let's look at an example of that. If I have a multiple choice question and I say, okay, here is a reading passage, read this, and then choose the answer that best summarizes the theme of this passage. If that's the way my question's written, I'm in the lower 2 levels of Bloom's. But if I say, here is a passage, you give me, summarize in one sentence or in a brief phrase the key component or main aspect of this passage. If I do it that way and the student has to come up with it on their own, then I'm into level 3 applying and level 4 analyzing. So I've gone up. So it depends on how it's written and what you have them doing as to what level of Bloom's it's in. But when we get to our action words like calculate, categorize, organize, distinguish, argue, assess, those, we're getting into the highest 3 levels of Bloom's, which are very difficult to assess with quiz types questions. There you're going to look more at essays, portfolios, case studies, research papers, projects, discussion forums, etc. So this is a good table to keep, print, have on hand when you're working with faculty to kind of say, okay, so here we already got, the first thing you want to do with faculty is make sure their objectives throughout the course are measurable. Second thing you want to do is start looking at these types of assessments that you're going to do. And so this is a good chart to have handy if you want to print it out and use it as an example. And you can find these all over the web that are different tools you can use as examples. Excuse me. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, actually these are in OpenStax. There's a good alignment example in biology if you go into it and look at the visual question and the objective. I believe that it's one that's an example of summarizing where they have to put something in the scientific process. They have to work with the scientific process. I'll go over that in a separate video because it's easier to not get it inside the window of that I'm recording in right now. So let's go on real quick. Case studies, there's a couple examples of case studies. The ultimate goal for any course is to move from the lower level of Bloom's to the higher level. One way we can achieve that are case studies. There's 2 examples of case studies that an instructor could use, and those are both medical related. So it's very important that you look at those. Those could be really good examples to share in your presentation. Project-based assessments, PBL, this is one I like. This is where you have students do a variety of different things. There's one resource there as a link to look at those. Scoring assessments and rubrics. It's important as you do these different things outside of traditional quizzes that you create detailed rubrics. When creating high-level assessments, assignments, assessments, one of the main challenges is determining how students will be assessed. To assess open-ended higher-level assessments, rubrics are necessary. Excuse me. And so there are 3 links there you can check out. Went ahead too fast. There are 3 links you can check out there with information about rubrics. I'm going to kind of pick up the pace just a little bit because I know this video is getting long and there's several different things I want to share. So now that we've discussed higher level assessments, let's talk about creating quiz-based assessments. In this section, we're going to discuss writing quality question stems, importing questions. Actually, that's a Moodle thing, so I want to take that out. But we will talk about question banks real quick. I'll go into some information on question banks. So from there, let me go to the next slide real quick. Writing quality question stems. There's 2 really good resources on this slide that will link to writing quality question stems. These are awesome to share with faculty. When designing quiz-based assessments, there is a way to assess higher-level Bloom's if the question stems are written properly. One strategy would be to allow students to write, peer review, and submit quiz questions. So look at that. Look at those 2 resources. When it comes to academic integrity, this is where I'm going to talk briefly about question banks and actually creating question banks in Canvas really helps to manage all of your assessment questions in multiple ways, so you can use them different ways. So when creating quiz-based assessments, there are a couple different strategies that can be utilized to address academic integrity issues. They include creating question banks and shuffling question and answer choices. One of the things that I've found that faculty want to do more often than not is they immediately want to try to address academic integrity, cheating, and so forth by putting a time constraint on the assessment. There are a lot of people out there in the world who are just not good test takers. It doesn't matter if you give them 24 hours or 40 minutes. They're going to do about the same either way. They overanalyze things, they think about it too much, and different stuff like that. So by putting time constraints on it, you are really kind of could be negatively impacting some students. Now, the one key aspect to this is, say I'm in an AP course. At the end of the year in an AP course, students are required to take the AP, they're not required, but they take the AP exam. And that's a timed exam. Now, in that aspect, you would want to make sure that some of your post-assessments in an AP course would have that time constraint set on them, so that you are also preparing students for that final assessment that they would take. But outside of that, if you're not in a program that requires that, I would focus more on the way that you write questions, write extra questions in a bank. So say if I want a quiz to have 10 questions, I suggest writing 15 to 20 questions, sticking them in a bank and setting it up to say pull 5 from this standard, 5 from this standard, 5 from this standard, make them each this many points, and that way you create that way you're really addressing academic integrity. You also set the questions to shuffle, the answers to shuffle, and so that way no two students are getting the exact same assessment in the same order, and it makes it a lot more difficult to cheat. And with that, I like to give a couple of attempts, and I know that's another thing that a lot of faculty don't like to do. However, you got technology glitches that can happen, all kinds of other things, and so just because you give them a second attempt, if you have all these other things in place, they are getting a brand new assessment. They're not seeing the same thing. They'll see different questions. They may see some of the same ones. The answer choices will be in different orders. So you have things configured to address the academic integrity piece. And so I believe that is the last slide for this presentation. I know this one's a lot longer, but these are all some very important things that you want to keep in mind when you're working with faculty in terms of course design.